or knock on the door. So it's a multi-tiered perimeter, if you will. And I just think he stepped out of the vehicle. He could have went around the backside of it, but he chose the path that he chose. And unfortunately, this woman ran over him or hit him. So, short of that, I don't think it could be avoided unless he just didn't come to work that day.
I mean, this is a terrible, incident. No matter which way you look at it, a life was lost here, and none of us are okay with that. But as far as the law enforcement, you do have to take a step back. And in the video that I mentioned earlier, James, I mean, the woman who was with Good was clearly taunting, those agents out there earlier. And it's like they wanted a reaction, obviously not to this extent. But, you yourself, we've spoken, previously, that is one thing that often doesn't get shown. It's, the lead up to things. It's the baiting of officers and law enforcement agents that lead to, unfortunately, tragic incidents like this.
Yeah, but I mean, having someone taunting you and yelling and screaming and spitting, and that doesn't, you don't just go to deadly force, Hannah. So that's where the training comes in. I mean, going through training, you're going to be taunted by the trainers, right? You're going to be put in certain situations to where you're about to break, but you can't. You've got to maintain that discipline. Here's the deal. The First Amendment says these folks can go out and yell and scream. They can wave signs. That is their First Amendment right. So I think from all accounts, I've seen ICE pretty much hold their cards close to their vest, and they're not overreacting. And I've got to tell you, being in that position as some of these ICE agents, it's hard sometimes not to react to some of these protesters. But I think they get a B in terms of the mental game, and it's a mental game in terms of reacting to these protesters.
James Copenhaver, our law enforcement expert there with decades in the industry. James, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you, Hannah. Thank you.
Alrighty. Right now, we do have a crew in downtown Orlando near City Hall where the protesters are gathering. Fox 35's Matt Trezza is live now. So, Matt, what are you seeing out there?
Good morning, Hannah. So, yeah, we've got, I'd say, several hundred people out here lining the streets around City Hall Plaza. They've got signs, they're honking horns, they are calling out to the passing traffic, which is honking horns in response. Across the street, we've got a few dozen Orlando police officers keeping an eye on everything, making sure that everything stays peaceful. Generally, everyone seems to be standing around, chanting, giving their message to the passing vehicles. And again, like I said, there's a lot of honking horns in response to them, receptive to their message. To talk more about who these people are, why they're out here, they say it is the Immigrants Are Welcome Here coalition that very quickly put this gathering together. And to talk more about this, I'm joined by Minister Sheena Roll, who is with that group. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me. So tell me, why are you in the group out here?
To put it shortly and clearly, it is time to take ICE off of our streets. It is time to admit that this kind of wrong-headed, failed attempt at community safety is causing more harm than good. From the federal level to the local level, local cooperation with ICE is turning our everyday officers into federal officers that can harm with impunity. We are seeing people without training. We are seeing people that are operating more off of ego than law. We are beyond the falsehood that this is about just taking criminal, illegal, immigrants off the streets. We're actually harming anyone that gets in someone's ego's way. And there are children, there are families that have been languishing under this. It's time to stop this. And it's not just about what happened to Renee Good. It's about all the horrible things that happened before and that we don't want more of it.
Gotcha. Now, when you saw that video, what went through your mind and what did you see when you looked at that video?
I saw history. I saw history repeating itself. I saw the fruit of what happens when you don't stop bad things soon enough. When you set the standard that there will be no accountability, that there will be impunity no matter what you do, that an officer is always right, that we are about might and not safety. That is exactly what it looks like. And so all the rhetoric that we've heard, we saw played out in that video, and we have to stop it.
Gotcha. Now, I've got to bring it up, to the people who looked at that video and said, it looks to me like she drove at the officer and the officer was defending himself according to his training, what would your response to that be?
I would say think about your mother and your sister and your daughters who are drivers and ask yourself, if she were scared, if she were in her community, and she, not a trained federal agent, was simply in fear for her life, should a cop shoot her in her face? That's what I asked them to think.
And to the people who say ICE is going after illegal immigrants who are here in America, they shouldn't be, they're undocumented, we need to take them out of our communities, what would your response to that be?
The best way to know that you're doing that with precision is to offer due process. The Constitution demands it and requires it, and so if you followed the Constitution, upheld that, you would see that anyone who is arrested would have the opportunity to have due process, and then you could create a legal and fair process for that. And otherwise, this is not democracy. This is not the America that we have claimed we have, and we're not following laws. We're operating off of people's egos, and it's harming everybody.
Gotcha. So there are protests like this that are organized here, other cities around the U.S. Do you think the administration, do you think people in power will take a look at it, will take note of what you're saying and doing here?
I have not seen this administration to express that they care about the democratic voice of the people. It will be incumbent on the people in our communities, your neighbors, your churches, your community institutions, to press and create change. We have to get past looking for heroes in our work, in our movement. Be the hero in your community and stand up with the hero next door, because we can't wait for the big guy in charge to change his heart or make a better decision. We've got to press for it.
I appreciate your insight. Thank you so much for speaking with me. We're going to stay out here, keep an eye on things, and check back in with you a little bit later. For now, we're live in downtown Orlando. Matt Trezza, Fox 35 News.
Well, Matt, before we let you go, I did want to ask you, I know they said that they got this protest together very quickly. How many folks are they expecting to be out there? When will this wrap up? I know you said local law enforcement is out there. I saw as well state troopers out there, too.
Yeah, right now they didn't have any projection for the crowd size they were looking for. They did say that this was planned to go from 12 till about 2. Probably some people are going to hang out after that. I would say that compared to the No Kings protest that we attended a few months back, this is nowhere near the size of that. But again, they say that this was probably because it was more hastily arranged. They don't have the same turnout that they did with that. But again, they say they're probably going to be here for the next couple of hours.
Matt, understandable. Thanks. We'll check in with you in a bit. All right, well, the Department of Homeland Security and the White House both say this shooting is justified. As we're seeing all over the country, not everyone on board with that agreement. So political expert Carl Jackson joining us now. Carl, you are conservative. You've got a podcast. I know you've got an opinion on all this.
Hey, thank you for having me, Hannah. I absolutely do. Listen, we've seen the video. We've seen the latest video, which was the video that the officer had on him. And in my opinion, the shooting was absolutely justified. It is nonsense for these people to sit here and say, by the way, these are organized protests. This isn't grassroots uprising or anything like that. You have a group that are paid agitators. ICE Out for Good is what they're called. And this is complete and utter nonsense. I'm so sorry that Renee Nicole Good was shot and killed. But the truth of the matter is Renee Nicole Good was interfering in legal law enforcement operations. You can protest on the side of the road like the people are doing right here in Orlando, Florida. I heard the guest prior to me say, think about your mother, think about your sister. Well, my mother or my sister would have not sped a 2,000-pound vehicle in front of an ICE agent, allowing themselves to justifiably be shot. I know what they're trying to do is make this woman a hero, and I'm sorry, it's painful. It's tragic. She's dead. She's got 3 children, actually 2 of which were taken away in a custody battle, and she decided to be irresponsible and block lawful law enforcement practices. And quite frankly, they talk about not making the community safer. Do these people understand who's being taken out of these communities? It's not just illegal aliens. I know they like to just use that, or migrants or immigrants. That is a doggone lie. That is a half truth. That is a lie by omission. ICE is operating criminal illegal aliens. They were literally operating or arresting, and they had just recently done so, I believe prior to that stop, a murderer, a rapist. These are the people that they were getting out of the communities. So in essence, what these fake protesters are doing is saying, hey, listen, I'm for the criminal illegal alien rapist and murderer. murderers. If that woman is worried about her sister, her mother, she should be worried about the criminal, illegal, alien rapists that are out there on the streets willing to hurt her mother, willing to hurt her sister. And for law enforcement to be demonized like this, let me say this. In the United States of America, if we don't have the rule of law, we have nothing. We have absolutely nothing. That's what sets us apart from Russia, Iran, China, Venezuela. So these people, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm trying to be as nice as possible, Hannah, these people are useful idiots because these criminals don't care if you're Republican. They don't care if you're Democrat. They don't give a flip. These people will come after them just like they did the ICE agent. And that lady, when she made the decision to speed forward, she, in essence, in my opinion, that shooting was completely and utterly justified.
So, Carl,
that officer had reasonable.
Sorry. I know we've got a delay. We just heard from one of the local organizers here at the Orlando protest going on. And you heard right there, she said herself, ICE agents need to be off the streets. And that sentiment is shared by many people now saying the same thing. You obviously don't agree.
You know what? I believe there's a small vocal minority of left-wing radicals that are spewing this nonsense. Most people want their streets to be safe. They may not agree with the tactics that the Department of Homeland Security is operating. I understand that, but the person with common sense understands that this is the way law enforcement is done. It never looks pretty. And by the way, for all of these lefties on the street, it's funny to me that what they're not talking about is in 2023, it is the Joe Biden administration that gave the DHS policy or modified the DHS policy to they no longer have to shoot to stop a moving vehicle, but they could literally shoot the operator. That was done in Joe Biden's administration in 2023. So all of these people, left-wing Democrats out there getting all hot and bothered, they need to go back and look at the Biden administration and ask them why they're the ones that modified that policy. So according to that policy, that ICE officer did exactly what he was trained to do. And I think it's a joke that these people will sit here and judge that officer when you have to make a split second decision. I guarantee you, if they were in front of that vehicle and they had to make the same decision, they'd do the same thing. They're nothing but a bunch of wannabe fake paid protesters, many of them, and they're a bunch of Monday morning quarterbacks. That's all they are. This is a very small radical group, or amount of the population. But they're always in front of cameras. They're making the most noise.
Yep, Carl, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey telling ICE to leave the state. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz calling ICE the modern-day Gestapo. That was a big one. Other politicians calling for an end to ICE completely. You're saying no. You're saying this is ridiculous. You're saying this didn't even start with the Trump administration.
No, you know what? I would say
far back.
Yeah, I would say Frey. Well, beyond that, Hannah, I would say this. When it comes to Frey and Walz, I would be saying the same ignorant things they're saying if I was trying to distract from the massive fraud that is going on in Minnesota. Frey and Walz, in my opinion, should be in jail. There's no way they were not complicit in that fraud that was going on with Feed Our Future, also the daycare scandal. So they are, it's sad, but this lady, Renee Nicole Good, I hate to say this, but I believe it's true. I think they're happy she got killed because now there's a distraction away from their criminality. So that's why they're making all the noise. And I think conservatives and Republicans, be careful of this, be mindful of this. What the left really wants to do is distract you from what I believe to be is going to be a quid pro quo system that operates with the Democrat Party and these federal government assistance programs operating with NGOs in order to circulate money back in the Democrat coffers. I believe that's what's going down. And sadly, Renee Nicole Good, I'm sorry she's dead. She made that choice, no one else. And it was a very bad choice. But this is a distraction from what's really going on. And that's Minneapolis fraud. And I believe it's fraud that we're going to see in a lot of these blue cities nationwide.
Carl, we'll have to see it all unfold. We appreciate you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah.
Okay, well, months prior to all of this, the agent who shot and killed Good was seriously injured on the job. According to reports, in June, he was hit by a car and allegedly dragged 50 yards, as we said, by that driver who they were attempting to arrest at the time. The driver, according to the Department of Homeland Security, is a serial criminal illegal alien who agents were trying to take into custody at the time. The agent involved did have to be hospitalized for injuries sustained in that incident. And just a few days ago, on January 8th, the Department of Homeland Security releasing new stats when it comes to assaults against ICE agents. So I want to read them out to you. When it comes to assaults themselves, from January 20th to December 31st in 2025, there were 275 registered assaults against ICE agents. The year before, that number was 19. When it comes to vehicular attacks, January 21st, 2025 to January 7th, 2026, almost a full year there, 66 vehicular attacks against ICE agents. The year before, only 2. It's safe to say violent attacks against these agents are on the rise, but protests resulting from this law enforcement involved shooting aren't that unusual. The last time we saw it at the scale, though, was probably following George Floyd's death. That was in 2020. Dr. Larry Walker, associate professor at UCF, joining us now. Dr. Walker, give us some perspective into these mass gatherings, these demonstrations to push back against when something like this happens in our country.
Yeah, good afternoon. I think it's really important to note, while this event is certainly tragic, the shooting happened recently a few days ago. I think one of the things that Americans, in terms of understanding from a historical perspective, that these kind of events have happened throughout U.S. history. And, I know that, emotions are really inflamed right now, but I think it's important as Americans, for us to wait till this investigation plays out. Many of us have seen the video. And secondly, understand that peaceful protests are fundamental to the to the Constitution, First Amendment, and that as long as those protests are peaceful, that's fine and consistent, like I said, with the U.S. Constitution. But overall, we need to continue to let this, play out in terms of the investigations and see how, what we find out in terms of, I know we see multiple camera perspectives, but once again, we do need cooler heads to prevail during this turbulent time.
Dr. Walker, this shooting obviously sparking a larger conversation here, highlighting politics, red versus blue, Republican versus Democrat. Talk to us about the political fallout. Are you surprised by how quickly this was politicized?
So I think the important thing in matter is, and I'm a student of history, is that when events like this occur, I think ultimately it'd be interesting to find out if this has any impact on state and federal policy issues. So I'm not really surprised. I mean, we can go back in history and look at the women's suffrage movement and then the passage of the 19th Amendment or various other events throughout United States history. So people protesting because they see something, well, obviously now during this time on television or other events that, emotions become inflamed is not new and it's not surprising. But I think regardless of your party affiliation, once again, we have to just be careful and we need to bring the rhetoric down.
Now, we just heard from conservative political analyst Carl Jackson a few minutes ago. I'm not sure if you heard him weigh in, but he was talking about the fact that, those on the left are using this, as a martyr, as a benchmark, as a way to push across an agenda. Do you have that same opinion?
Yeah, I think it goes the point I just made about, the rhetoric and, like I said, we're, as Americans, in terms of figuring out what direction the country is, going into, whether you're, like I say, or a Democrat or Republican or independent, is really what's the issue here. And once again, if, the investigation finding out exactly what happened, and I just get a chance to kind of watch some of your previous interviewee. But like I said, I think it's really careful. And I'm someone that, lived in D.C. and worked on Capitol Hill for a number of years and worked with people on both sides of the aisle. And I think my experience has taught me is that when, Americans allow investigations to play out and keep the rhetoric to a minimum, then eventually we can have a better idea what direction we're heading as a country.
Okay, so Dr. Walker, piggybacking on that, what do you think we will see change at the federal level, really, if anything, as a result of all this?
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Obviously, I talked about the investigation, but I'm quite sure you will see some state and federal policy changes, whether people agree with those or not, certainly over the next couple of months. But what that looks like, I don't think anyone knows. This may not be the last in an instance which, in terms of like someone from a law enforcement interacts with a U.S. citizen and something like this happens. But I think this incident, among others, will continue to shape state and federal policy.
Dr. Walker, you mentioned cool heads will prevail. We are all hoping that that is the case. Dr. Walker, thank you so much for joining us, Associate Professor at UCF. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we do want to get back out now to Fox 35's Matt Trezza. He is live in downtown Orlando, where a protest is underway right now. He was speaking with the organizer just a little while ago. It looks like he's been talking to some protesters as well. Matt, what can you tell us?
Yeah, so we decided to kind of walk through the crowd here, give you a sense of what we're seeing. Like I said, a few hundred people walking around here now. They were kind of focused their protest out toward the intersection of South Street and Orange Avenue. Right now, though, it looks like there are some speakers out in front of City Hall, and so about half the crowd has turned this way toward those speakers. They have signs I'm reading: prejudice, injustice, cowardice, stop ICE, ICE out, abolish ICE, remove Trump. Those are just some of the signs that we can quote to you that are, here. There are a lot that we can't quote. There are some signs that point out Renee Good, and they've got her picture up there. So a lot of different emotions on display here. You hear a lot of honking horns in support of these protesters and of their message that they're bringing. Again, a few hundred people, I would say, not the same size or scale as the No Kings protest that we saw a few months back. The organizers say that's because this was arranged kind of at the last minute, so they couldn't get out as many people as they had before, but still a very strong turnout, I would say, for a fairly hastily organized activity. So we're going to keep walking around, try to find more people to talk to, more perspectives to get. We've got several dozen Orlando police officers, some highway patrol across the street. Like during the No Kings protest, just kind of keeping an eye on everything, making sure everything stays very peaceful. And absolutely it has. There has been no activity as far as any kind of arrests or anything like that. Police just keeping an eye on everything. Protesters out here just chanting slogans, making their voices heard, hoping that the administration, those in positions of authority, pay attention and heed those words. And just, a peaceful gathering, letting people know what their thoughts are. I'm going to try and find some folks to talk to us and give us their perspective. Perhaps we can check back in with you in a little while with more on that. But this is kind of like a good look at how things are looking right now, Hannah.
Well, Matt, before we let you go, though, obviously, with these types of events, within seconds they can turn south. We've seen it happen time and time again. How is the overall, feeling out there? I know you said you couldn't read some of the signs. Are folks more angry, more hopeful? More looking for a change? What are you seeing in the people out there themselves?
Well, like you say, looking for a change is the best way that I would put it. Trying to hope that the administration will hear the words of people at this protest, at the protests that are happening nationwide, similar to this, and take some kind of heed or see whether or not policy can be changed in any way because of what is going on at this event and others like it across the country. That remains to be seen, but certainly these folks say they are going to make their voices heard, whether the administration likes it or not. It's not a sense of anger that I get out here. It is a sense of resolution that these people want a change and they want to be the change that they want to see, and they're trying to do that to make that voice and that message heard here at this main intersection right here outside of Orlando City Hall.
Matt, I know you're kind of in the thick of things right now, but just to give us some perspective, how close to where you are right now is where law enforcement is situated?
Say that one more time, Hannah.
How close is law enforcement to you right now? I know you're kind of in the middle. Are they across the street? Do they have, any gear on?
Yeah, no, come this way. So we are, like you said, in the thick of it here. Hundreds of people around me. The closest that we see law enforcement is across the street right here.
Okay. How about
Pardon me, if you
counter
could just step back
protesters?
right here. I appreciate it. Thank you. So right there, we have Orlando Police and a couple of Florida Highway Patrol. And like I said, in the dozens, keeping an eye on things. I don't see any counter protesters at this point. During the No Kings protest, I would say there were only about a dozen or so of them regardless. I don't see any here at this moment.
I remember they popped up during No Kings, so I was just curious. All right, Matt, thank you so much for that coverage. Appreciate it.
Sure.
And thank you guys at home for joining us for our special live coverage. I'm Hannah McKenzie. Fox 35 News is back tonight at 5 and 10. We'll have a full recap for you there. Enjoy your Sunday.
Across the Northeast that will be the weather maker. So down in the Southeast, we finally cleared the showers and we finally cleared the cold front, meaning behind that, yeah, maybe it's a little cooler in the 60s, but some clouds.